My name is Adam Collings. I'm the head of marketing here at AdMind Analytics. And today is episode 2 in our series on GA4. I'm joined by our founding engineer, Mike Query. And what we want to do every day is just talk about the stuff that we're hearing, that we're seeing with our clients and seeing with as people come to us with questions, and hopefully pass that information along and see how other people are handling these things and see where else we can be helpful. So the topic that came to you, Mike, was about visualizations in GA4. And having listened to the conversation, it sounded to me like the core sort of pain point from this individual was something along the lines of, we've deployed GA4, we've troubleshot a few of the issues that we were having, we were expecting to see X and got Y. And in this case, the X was we were expecting to see cool reports that we could use as a team to benchmark week over week or time period performance. And what we got was the Explore tool. And so walk us through from the engineering perspective why that misunderstanding happened for this individual, and then what you kind of told them to expect moving forward.
Yeah, so I think that as folks are kind of tearing into GA4 and seeing what the reporting looks like, as data starts to pile up in there and people start to try to use it as their primary web analytics tool, we're starting to see some of the frustrations around its functionality or its differences with Universal Analytics come to light. So this is one of them. In GA4, you can, thinking about sharing insights with your team and publicizing data, there's a couple things you can do in GA4. One, you can customize the pre-built reports a little bit. So you can specify some of the metrics and some of the default ranges and things. You can do that a little bit. The other thing that you can do is you can build explorations and in the Explore tool. And these are very limited visualizations, but they're meant kind of as an analysis tool, sort of an ad hoc question. You can drill down into things pretty deeply. You can apply segmentation, but they're not particularly shareable. And it's certainly, if you're trying to share with stakeholders who don't have access to the GA4 interface, you got to get users and assigned and permissions granted, and then it's a bit of a navigation to find them. So that's what we have in GA4. In Universal Analytics, we had dashboards that we could build. They aren't used too commonly anymore. Google actively has been discouraging them for a few years in favor of Data Studio. And we had custom reports. And so you could kind of build some custom things to look at period over period or to monitor. GA4 doesn't have a very good monitoring set of functionality. The reason that is, so that's the issue. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
There's not as many built-in
reports. Tell us why Google is doing this, Mike.
So the reason is that Google is trying to build up the Data Studio, now called Looker Studio. I'm going to call it Data Studio for the rest of the day. Google's trying to build the Data Studio functionality up as the place where we build dashboards, where we share and gather around data to do accountability with our teams and to monitor progress and performance over time. Because we can join more than just web analytics data in there, we can visualize it and brand it to the way that we want it to look. Google is pressing us that way. Now, their reasoning is important, not because we care too much other than it helps us know what the future might look like, but the reasoning is Google cares about two things as far as revenue goes: ad revenue generation and cloud revenue. And I kind of do this because cloud's smaller than that, but they're in a war with Microsoft and Amazon to try to become profitable and king of the cloud. Analytics is a pawn in that scheme. So Google is encouraging us to use their BI tools and use our analytics data in their cloud because it generates cloud revenue and it encourages business to move marketing functionalities and to build products on top of Google's cloud. So it's good for us because there's investment going into the utility of BI tools. Google's building out the functionality in Data Studio much faster than they are the functionality in GA4. But there's a reason behind that. So we should just know that's what's happening at Google and make our business decisions accordingly.
And so it sounds like what you talked about was the solution here for him was to use Data Studio, Looker Studio, to create these visuals and just not rely on GA4 at all. Just if you're trying to dig in, figuring out, and that
for
was
that
kind of
specific purpose, for the purpose
yeah.
of creating a dashboard the team can gather around weekly and say, what's our performance been? It was going to be a lot more successful for that effort to use the GA4 data, but to build that visualization in Looker Studio.
And so once that dawned on him that like, oh, I'm not the only one who can't figure out how to get the right visuals in GA4. That's actually a designed kind of funneling mechanism that Google is architected to get us into using these cloud products. So then the question becomes, how does he decide whether or not he would need additional outside help, or if his needs would be sufficient with his own team to build the visual reporting in Looker Studio? So what was the advice that you gave him along those lines?
That was just the question around. It depends on what you want those reports to do. You got to think about what insights you're trying to drive with what people at what frequency, and then that tells you what the report should look like, and it tells you what the data sources for that report should be. And if it's just put together a few GA4 visuals in Looker Studio, then it's probably not too big of a deal. It probably doesn't need a whole lot of outside help. But one of the benefits that I encouraged him to think about and explore is they were a lead generation effort, and they were thinking about how do we measure lead quality and attribute leads back to their proper source of attribution, and how do we associate LTVs and ultimately revenue, closed won deals with what happens on the web. I said, Google's trying to open the pathway for us to do that by giving us the GA4 data in BigQuery and allowing us to pull in other data sources into BigQuery, where we can build a single picture of our business data or of our marketing data, and then we can visualize all on top of that. It doesn't have to be even in Google's tools, but I said, as long as you're thinking about going down that path, think about what the end goal, what the ideal state would look like. And that's a scenario where maybe that team doesn't have the data engineering prowess to accomplish that on their own, but there is an opportunity there for that business.
So simple data visualizations, benchmarking performance, Looker Studio. Bigger, connecting your web engagement data, your ads engagement data, your CRM data, and understanding what content influenced people along this journey that became the lead. That's more of a BigQuery, and then Google's opening that door for you to be able to then build those things. But your team might not have the internal skill set to manage and organize and join all of those data sets, in which case you might need additional outside resources. Was that generally speaking, that was it?
That's fair. Yep. Okay. I think that's right.
Great recommendations across the board. Let us know in the comments section how you plan to deal with visualizations in GA4.